Hey everyone, welcome to the NoochieCast, episode 7. My name is Matt B. Nucci, and it may have been a while since you've seen me on here, and that would be for good reason. It's been a few weeks, I think 3-ish weeks, that I've had to take off from doing this, primarily for personal stuff. Is if you may have seen from episode 6's, I had school going on. School has just been pretty kind of all over the place right now. We had midterms, we had spring break, things like that, and we just didn't have time for recording because I just literally at points I didn't have the physical capacity to do it, and then other times I just was so overwhelmed with other things that I had to do that I just had to make a call that I just couldn't do it. But we're back, and it's been a while, and holy fuck, the world has blown up since I left. It's been like a little under a month, and like last time or 2 episodes ago, I mentioned we were talking about PlayStation, or someone had pulled out a GDC and PAX East for the coronavirus, and I was like, I think we're kind of like it could be could be kind of impactful, but I don't think it's going to be that big. And oh my God, was I wrong. Like, holy shit. The world has gone to hell, and I don't know what to say. Honestly, that's the first item in the news. I really only have 2 big news items this week, because there were other things that happened in the time while I was gone, but they're really just 2 big ones, and I just want to talk about those for a little more extended of a time. First one, obviously, coronavirus. What is happening? The world is off its chain right now. And by off its chain, I mean no one's doing anything. E3 was canceled. GDC was canceled. There were a bunch of others that have been canceled or everyone is pulled out of. And I just don't understand what's happening. Like, I completely get it. I completely agree with all the things that have been announced. Like, something like E3 should not be happening right now. You should not have like thousands of people going and touching the same controllers and like being in the same rooms for 4 straight days. So that for sure is a good call. I just think the coronavirus has affected things so much that you just never know what's going to happen now. And I'm trying to look ahead to the future to try to see how this is going to affect the year in gaming and beyond. Like, obviously, gaming isn't the most important thing, and like, people need to stay safe and stay healthy, and that is the first priority. And if a game gets delayed or like E3 gets canceled, me being sad that I'm not going to get a big press conference with all the people and all the hype does not outweigh the fact that everyone should stay safe. It is sad that we're not going to be able to see those, more because I'm really not sure what they're going to do now. 2020 is supposed to be such a huge year for gaming, but both in game releases and in the future, as in console releases, because like the PS5 and the Xbox Series X will stick around. We'll get to that in a minute. Are both supposed to be releasing this year, and we'll see how that lasts. Like, people are saying that this could last. The range of times that this coronavirus pandemic could last to ranges from like late May to like late next year. I don't think it'll last until late next year, but I think it'll last past May. Like, I think we could see this go through August or September. And at what point then do manufacturing cycles, marketing cycles, just like all the development for these consoles have to be delayed? Or, for example, like Halo Infinite is supposed to be a launch title for the Xbox Series X. At what point does 343 have to delay that game because they're not able to put the development in because they're not allowed to go to work, so they have to be working from home and they don't have the capacity to do that at home. That kind of thing. I'm a little concerned that things like that are going to start to happen. Games like, I mean, as I'm recording this, Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing are about to come out. And games like this, within the next month-ish, are probably fine, because they've already gone gold, or they're about to go gold, and that's not really going to affect it. But, like, the game that I'm looking to after that period is, like, The Last of Us. Is The Last of Us going to be okay? Because, at what point, like, they're probably close, but they're not at gold yet. They're probably maybe a month away from going gold, and this is going to keep them from going home. California just issued an announcement for everyone to stay home, like the shelter in place for everyone. So obviously Naughty Dog's not going to be going into the office. Are they able to finish that game from home for however long that they have to stay at home? Or are they going to have to push it back again for whether it's like 2 or 3 weeks or whether it's 2 or 3 months? Does that push into the PS5 launch cycle? Like, those kinds of things are what are worrying me. Ghost of Tsushima is supposed to come out in June or July. I forget. They announced the date. I forget what it was. But that's the same kind of deal. Like, Sucker Punch, are they going to be able to finish that game from working from home? Like, it's all those kinds of things that are coming up, and I am worried that games are going to start to be pushed back. And again, like, this is just me as a gamer being sad that my games don't come out. Like, people being safe is obviously more important, and I'm not gonna complain that developers can't go into the office because I can't get my games early enough. But as a fan of the industry, it's something that worries me, in the fact that games are going to start to be pushed back, and that will affect business and things like that. But I am, like, obviously can't make it clear enough. People need to be safe. On the other side of that is, like, E3 and all the press conferences, kind of tying it into the other news item that I will have. But this week was supposed to be GDC, I believe, and PlayStation was going to have their whole, like, tech spec announcement, just kind of talking about what the PS5 is, going through that. Obviously, GDC didn't happen, so PlayStation had the whole their own kind of conference where they were talking about the specs, and I'll get into what the details of that was in a minute. But that kind of thing is what I'm assuming the press conferences are going to be like from now on, at least for this year. PlayStation will obviously probably do its state of play for E3 time, and then throughout the year to talk about what they need to talk about. We all assumed that PlayStation would have its own, like, event like they had in 2013 to announce the PS4. That's obviously not going to happen now. I don't know what they're going to do, because Xbox already did that at the Game Awards. Like, the Xbox already had their big reveal of, this is the console and this is what it's called and here's all this. And now they have the luxury of having gotten that out of the way, and can go into just talking about games. And games are a much more easy topic to talk about in that kind of direct style. But maybe for me personally, I think when you're announcing a console, it's really hard to do that in front of, like, just as a direct kind of deal, like a state of play kind of deal, because I feel like a console needs fanfare, and without fans, you can't have fanfare. Maybe it's like, maybe they're just trying to do it in tandem with, like, Twitter or the YouTube comments or the Twitch comments or something. But I think it's hard for the PS5. Like, the PS5 is going to come out and say, like, this is what we look like. This is what our, like, logo is, or not our logo, but, like, this is what our, like, our slogan is, or other things like that. Here's, like, a sizzle reel for this is what the PS5 is. But they're gonna have to do that digital or like directly, like as in like a direct or in a state of play, whereas Xbox doesn't have to do that. But Xbox also has their own set of problems because they've never done a direct style kind of thing. PlayStation has that already. Like they have that format in the state of play. They not necessarily even in like developing one, but a state of play is an established format, and even if one of those formats, like one of those states of play, just has to be only on what the PS5 is, that is, if a little underwhelming, it still is something that people will understand. I don't know what Xbox is going to do. Like, are they going to... They mentioned for E3, they would hold their own kind of thing. Like, they would talk about what they're going to do in the future to kind of combat not having E3. They're not going to have their own conference. Like, they're not going to hold their own conference like they did last year, or last couple of years, where they technically weren't at E3, but they were, like, across the street. They're not going to do that because they need fans to do that, and they're not going to have fans, probably. So I imagine they're going to do their own kind of direct thing. Honestly, what I'm imagining is you remember the Stadia announcement when Stadia had their own like thing, like direct kind of thing, but it was just Phil Harrison like in like a white background, just like talking. And then they had a couple other people come in and do their whole thing and announce like whatever games they announced. I think like Baldur's Gate 3. I'm imagining it like that, where it's like Phil Spencer comes on stage or comes in to like whatever thing, talks, and then like goes into it, basically like what he would do in an E3 press conference, but without fans and like without a stage, which again kind of sucks that we're not going to get that because those are always the best. But if it's in the way of keeping people safe, then it's all worth it. But I don't know. It's very much a wait and see kind of approach. I don't know what's going to happen. No one really does. I'm anticipating probable delays in games. I really don't see how developers, especially ones that are so close to being done, like a Naughty Dog or a Sucker Punch or... CD Projekt Red announced that they aren't going to have a delay, but I mean, I guess they aren't from the US, so like, I don't know what Poland's doing out here, but it might be different. But at the same time, like maybe Avengers, like all those kinds of games have potential delays coming, and I think it could impact the cycle of consoles. I don't think the consoles are necessarily going to be delayed, but I'm thinking it could affect the cycle in terms of like the hype cycle, or maybe just as an example, maybe Ghost of Tsushima is delayed to a point where it has to come out in November instead of July. Like, that's a long delay. I don't think that would happen, but like, bear with me. And then Ghost of Tsushima also has to come out on PS5 with its own version on PS5 as opposed to just coming out on PS4. I don't know. There's a lot of things that could happen. But I definitely think that there are going to be some implications in the gaming sphere outside of just having some of these things canceled, some of these like press conferences canceled. Luckily, with directs and states of play, there is a precedent for how to handle non in-person conferences or like information distribution. I don't know. But it is going to be weird. It's going to be really weird. All right, next on the news is the only other item on the news is a big one. And so we're assuming that Series X and PS5 come out when they're announced to come out. Well, holiday, I guess. But both of them, since I have been gone, have announced their specs. They're full. They're full. Like, here's what the console is. Here's everything that's in the box, like technical specs. I am not a tech person. I'm not like I'm not like a computer geek who really understands what all these words mean. So I'm not really, like, I don't want to go into what the specs are because I couldn't tell you what they are, what all of them mean. But from just in terms of raw numbers and in terms of what I've seen online from people talking about it, it looks like the Series X is, if not significantly, at least potentially noticeably more powerful than the PS5. In terms of raw power. Like, in terms of the just straight up what the Series X versus the PS5 can do, that it looks like the Series X is potentially slightly more powerful than the PS5 because it has, like, it's like 12 teraflops instead of, like, 10.25 or something. Like, it's not a lot, but it's not negligible. So it looks like the Series X is a little bit more powerful. What I want to talk about here is how they were announced, because the Series X tech specs were announced in a blog post just online. They were just like, hey, update from Phil Spencer, here's what's up, like that kind of thing. It was like, hey, like, Xbox Series X has like this many teraflops because that's the new buzzword, and like it has this many transistors and whatever. That's just words. But and that was fine. Like, that was it's just information. Like, it's just more information on what it is. Xbox has already done like I mentioned, they've already done their whole, like, blow their load on what the Series X is, what it's called, what it looks like, that kind of thing at the Game Awards. So they really didn't need to, like, go into it in their own conference here. Again, and with the PS5, like, again, GDC was supposed to be this week, and they were just like, it was supposed to be to the developers, to the computer nerds who really want to know what's inside the PS5. Here's what it is. And I realize it's hard to reschedule that, and it's hard to change what that is. But why did PlayStation allow that to happen the way that it did? Like, the PS5 just comes out, and they have they have Mark Cerny come out and talk for an hour about here's what the PS5 is in terms of hardware. Here are some numbers. Here are, like, our 3 big tenets on how we made the hardware. And then it's like here are some of the big things on it. So it was like 3D audio, the SSD, which is big, things like that. And, like, all of that sounds great. And I'm happy. Again, didn't seem like there were parts there where it seemed like they were trying to mention how, or they were trying to, like, spin, like, PR spin on why these numbers are smaller than Xbox's, without saying that. But like, Mark Cerny was like, oh, well, you can't just look at teraflops because it's how, like, the teraflops are used. And I'm sure that's true. Again, not a computer guy. It does seem like a bit of a PR spin. But regardless, it seemed like something, if that had happened at GDC, I think that would have been fine. I still don't think it would have been great, because you can't, like, the day before, PlayStation tweeted, tune in tomorrow, like, not verbatim, but, like, tune in tomorrow to see some new information on the PS5. Probably mention some new information on the hardware, the technical hardware of PlayStation 5. Now, obviously, that's pretty straightforward on, we're just going to be talking about specs. And, like, this is what the PS5 is, especially when you come to hear Mark Cerny talk about what is in the PS5. Like, obviously, you're probably just going to be getting some technical stuff. But if they're going to do it so that it's not within GDC, the Game Developers Conference, where the game developers are there and can understand it and disperse information and explain information, and that it would make sense that you're just talking about tech stuff. When you're not doing that in that context, it was so much more disappointing for people. like, I pretty much understood what was going to happen because of that tweet and because I knew it was GDC this week. But other than that, like, I was hoping at the end, like, Jim Ryan would come in at the end and be like, so that was great. Here's the hardware. Like, here's what it looks like, or something like that. Because, like, just doing that, I feel like it put a sour taste in a bunch of people's mouths. Not people who are in the industry who, like, really understand it or who knew what to expect, but people go on YouTube and they see, oh, 500,000 people are watching a live stream called The Road to PS5. Does that not, like, and people just go and click on that and see this really dry presentation from Mark Cerny being like, yo, like, 3D audio, like, that kind of thing. Just, it kind of makes it, I think it does put a sour taste in a bunch of people's mouths because they were expecting some actual information that wasn't just... And the thing is, I feel like a lot of it was already announced. Like, we knew the PS5 was going to have an SSD, and we knew that 3D audio was a thing. Like, I don't think... Like, because the Xbox has those things. Like, it's not something that's really unique to the PS5. I saw a tweet yesterday from, it was, I think, Jason Schreier had, like, quote tweeted it and said, this is something I've been hearing. Saying the quote tweet was like, I'm hearing that in a year, PS5 will be, despite not being quite as powerful, will be respected as one of the most innovative consoles ever. And if so, I'm fully on board for that. I'm just wondering why. Like, me as someone who doesn't necessarily understand the entire computer engineering part behind it, like that, the part of, like, here's what's actually within the box. I'm just wondering, what is PlayStation doing that Xbox isn't? And, like, is it relying on games, which, again, entirely possible. PlayStation has, at least up to this point, we don't know about, given Xbox's recent, like, first-party acquisitions, but PlayStation has had, historically, a way better, like, 10 trillion times better first-party lineup than Xbox has. And if this bet is to say the games are going to be a lot better, like the exclusive games, then that I totally get. But if it's just like, oh, the PS5 can run games better, I'm not sure how much I believe that, because it's not like it's not like third-party games are going to be going only to PS5, or, like, I don't know, priority to PS5, because that's not really how the industry works anymore. Like, those kinds of exclusive things, like Final Fantasy VII Remake, kind of weird. But, like, I don't think that kind of thing really happens anymore, at least not as much. And to say that the PS5 will be revolutionary and the Xbox Series X won't, implies that there's something that I'm missing. And I don't know. It leaves something to be seen. And to go back, I don't know. I feel like PS5's messaging has been kind of whack recently, because they just, like, it feels like they're building up to something, but I don't know what they're building up to. Like, it would make sense if they had announced, like, a week or two ago, hey, in like, next week we're going to be talking about the technical stuff from Mark Cerny. He's just going to be going over what's in the box. To hear about more about the games and things like that, then tune in on, like, April 12th, I don't know, to hear about, like, what our plans are with PS5. That would have been a good way to put it, because not only do we know we're getting, like, a little nibble on PS5 information, like, this week, but we know what we're building up to. Right now, we don't know what we're building up to. Xbox, we can assume, because we know that they're going to be at E3, or they were going to be at E3, that's where all that information was going to come out. They were going to they were going to probably announce a release date and a price, and here's all the games. And that would have made sense. But with Xbox or with PS5, we're just kind of left out to dry. We don't really know what's happening. And it's a little frustrating to me knowing how good the PS5 is probably going to be. Like, say even that revolutionary thing is, the comment on it being revolutionary and innovative isn't true, and it's just kind of like it's on par with Xbox Series X, like they're kind of equal. It's frustrating to me to see PlayStation like not kill their messaging, because one, they did last gen, or like with the PS4. But two, like, you already have that install base. Just like, you don't need to do anything special. Just tell people what they want to hear. This tech spec thing should not be the first thing that people are hearing about the PS5, other than a Wired article from a little while back and a logo at was that at DICE? Wherever that was. Like, I don't know. It's frustrating to me as a fan, both of PlayStation and just of the competition between PlayStation and Xbox, because it's just like this. I don't think it's a misstep, because there wasn't really a step taken. It's just there was the opportunity for a step that wasn't taken. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's the news. I didn't mean to take up half an hour on the news, but those were the two big things that have happened since I've been gone. Now, what I've been playing, again, it's been a while, so I have been playing a lot, but also at this point we are effectively in self-quarantine, not because I'm worried to have the coronavirus or anyone I live with, but because there's really no reason to go outside. I'm in college and all of my classes have been moved online. There's really, like, I don't know, there's no reason for me to leave my house, so I've been playing a lot of games. So there are a lot. Firstly, I actually just started for the first time is Shadow of the Colossus. So I'm sure you've probably heard of Shadow of the Colossus, in that it's one of the best games ever made. I've never played it, and I'm excited. I'm like 3 Colossi in, and it's really fucking good so far. I don't know. Well, I know how it didn't get to me because I never played it on PS2, and I just never bought it when it came out as a remake because I had other things to do. But it's free with PlayStation Plus this month, and I've been playing it, and it's really fucking good. I'm really enjoying it. Next, it's kind of a series of games that I just have been planning on playing through during this like quarantine hibernation period is all the Uncharted's, as well as The Last of Us. So just every game that Naughty Dog has put out since like 2007. I'm like halfway through Uncharted 4. I think I booted up Uncharted 2 just because I wanted to hear the theme music, that like da, 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 da. Like, you know what I'm talking about. I've been playing through a bunch of those. I've been watching one of my roommates play through The Last of Us. I played it through like 3 or 4 times, so I don't really need to play it again, but watching him play it through for the first time is a lot of fun, and then being able to experience that story again is just something I really enjoy. Let's see. Fortnite is something Fortnite is just an enigma to me, because every time that I think I'm not going to play it again, like I'll put it down for a week or two, or I'll like go do something and I'll just be like, like normally when I go on vacation and there's a game that's really popular and we come back and it's like, it's not that popular. It just gets more popular every fucking day. And with this self-quarantine thing, with the isolation thing, social distancing, there are just so many more people playing it, and they're making so much money. Oh my God. Last two. One was a game I reviewed actually on Gaming Vault. You can go check it out on Gaming Vault. Called Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. I can speak. It took Grand Blue Fantasy, the mobile RPG from Japan, made it into a fighting game. I thought it was pretty good. I think I gave it an 8. I don't know how I don't remember that. But it was either 7 or an 8. It was a good game. I enjoyed it. The RPG mode was kind of kind of overlong, kind of frustrating, but outside of that, like, gameplay was really good. I enjoyed it. And lastly, Ori and the Will of the Wisps came out last week. I'm like an hour into it, and it's another Ori game. I liked the original Ori. I can't say it's like my favorite game of all time, but it was like I enjoyed it for what it was, and I'm excited to keep playing this new Ori. But I would say of those, like, most of my time right now is probably going into the Uncharted's and The Last of Us, because those are just games that, like, Uncharted is my favorite series of all time. I've played through all of them multiple times. Like, I have the platinum. I think I have the platinum for every game, in some form. Like in 2 and 3, 2, 3, and 4. I had. I don't have it for 4 now that I think about it, but I definitely have it for 2 and 3. Originally on the PS3, and then I have 1, Drake's Fortune, remastered on PS4. I don't have 2 and 3 on PS4. I might go back and do that now, and then I might go back and do 4 because I have some time. And then I never actually played The Lost Legacy. Again, not because I didn't want to, but just because I just didn't have time. It came out at a weird time. So I'm probably going to go back and play through that. And like, all this has reminded me is, one, how good of a developer Naughty Dog is, to see where they've come from 2007 and how they really haven't missed in like almost any sense since then. But two, just like how fucking good those games are, man. Although it does, knowing the kind of crunch culture that Naughty Dog has, there was a Kotaku article, again from Jason Schreier, on the crunch culture at Naughty Dog. It is a little disheartening sometimes to see the mechanics that are put into those games, knowing that like they crunch so much, and like people don't really enjoy working at Naughty Dog. And it is a little sad to see, but the games are also so good that it like, I don't know. I honestly don't know what to think, because like it's hard to know what goes into those games, but also knowing how much that hard work paid off. Obviously I'm not one of the developers, so I can't say if it was worth it. But like, to know that all that hard work actually went into making 5 or 6 just utterly fantastic games, at least for me, is it puts it in very, like, a tint of a better light. Like, it still sucks, but at least knowing that there is very, very slight silver lining. All right, so on to the main story. I mentioned in my last one, I know it was a while ago, I still remember what I said, that one of my hot takes for gaming, and specifically in this generation, is that the Xbox One has had a better generation than the PS4 in terms of innovation. And I'm not entirely convinced that that's not a hot take, or that is a hot take. Like, I think there are people who agree with me. But I think the average person might not see that, because PlayStation has done a lot in terms of games. And what I wanted to do here was just review the generation for each console. And so I wanted to go through, and I have it listed out by year in my notes. And I'll kind of do that, but I don't want to just be able to, I don't want to just be listing games from each year and then say like, whatever. Like, because there are some years where nothing really happened in terms of like innovation or services or whatever. But there are some years that where that does happen, and I want to point that out. So starting in 2013, we're coming off of the PS3 and the Xbox 360. The Xbox 360 for a long time was just fucking demolishing the PS3. Like, it had much larger install bases, like in the US. The PS3 had only been able to keep up because Sony is big in Japan, and Xbox had almost no market share in Japan. But the Xbox 360 overall had higher console sales than the PS3 worldwide, somewhere in like the 60, 70 million hardware sold range. Right near the end, the PS3 ultimately outsells the Xbox 360 because of that final push in Japan, with a little bit, like the PS3 had good sales later in the US, but remember the PS3 fucked up right at the start, being $599 with like no storage, and the 360 didn't do that. I don't know if we're noticing a pattern. The PS3 fucked up, and the Xbox didn't do anything special, just didn't fuck up. Now we get to 2013, February. PlayStation announces the PS4. They announce that it's like this console that's focused on games. Basically, they're admitting what they did with PS3 at the start was a mistake, that it wasn't great. And they say, we're here for the players. We just want everyone to have a great experience. They announce, like, here's the games, here's Destiny, here's, like, Infamous Second Son, things like that. Everything's great. People love it. Like, nothing inherently wrong with it. Great. Couple months pass. We get to mid-May. And the Xbox announces that they're going to be announcing their next console. A little late, we may say, but, still before E3. And they are ready to announce their console, where they're going in the future. And holy fuck, this might be one of the worst conferences ever. Like, the Xbox comes out, announces the Xbox One. First thing they notice is that the Xbox One hardware is not great. Like, it doesn't look particularly great. PlayStation hasn't announced the hardware at this point, like what it looks like. But the Xbox One is just a big black box that's, like, bigger than everything else. And we're like, oh, that doesn't look great. And then they go on to talk about, here's the Kinect, and here's television, and here's how you can use the Xbox One to watch live TV, and here's how you can use the Xbox One to watch sports. And, like, the one game they talk about, I think they talk about, like, 2 games specifically at this conference. One of them is Quantum Break, which, admittedly, I really enjoyed that game. I know a lot of people didn't, but I did. But one of the big features in that game is television. And luckily for me, I'm a big TV guy, too. So I enjoyed that game. But that they come out and they're like, television. Here's a game. Wait, television again. Like, that kind of thing. And then the other game that comes out is Call of Duty Ghosts. At this point, Xbox still had that partnership with Call of Duty. And they're just like, this looks really nice. And they never really talk about the game. So it's, at that point, Xbox has kind of fucked up. Further on, in that week, we hear rumors that it's like, oh, it's always online. So it has to check in with the internet at least once a day, or else it won't work, because it needs to authenticate that, like, it needs to authenticate something. And we hear, oh, there aren't going to be any used games on it, because every used game, or every new game will have some kind of authenticating factor that puts that disc with that console, so you won't be able to trade discs with other console owners. And it's also that the Kinect will be required to be plugged in and will be sold with every console. All of that together makes for one of the worst conferences that a lot of people have ever seen. And then we get to E3. Now, E3 2013, again, maybe a hot take for me, Xbox's conference wasn't terrible. I thought it wasn't great, but it also wasn't, like, the worst thing I've ever seen, like some people say. It certainly was better than their Xbox One reveal event. But let's start, like, early in the day on that Monday. Xbox comes out, talks. Right at the start, they talk about the 360, but then they move into the Xbox One, and they announce like, Titanfall and things like that, and they announce the price is $499, which is a lot, but not something. It was on the high end of what we were expecting, and what we were anticipating. But then PlayStation comes out and just fucking nails it. I remember watching this conference and being like hearing all of the cheers and seeing Jack Tretton come on stage and be like, okay, so we won't have any restrictions on used games and like whatever, like things like that. Like we won't have to be online. Basically just like shot after shot after shot at Xbox being like, we're better, we're better, we're better. And then they come out and announce $399, so it's $100 cheaper, and it doesn't have all those fucking other features that Xbox has. And they announce at the same time, like they release a video of Shuei Yoshida and Adam Boyes, like, here's how you share a game on PS4. Just give it to the other person. All of that in one is just made the PS4, like that right there, plus Xbox having to roll back on having the Kinect plugged in and ultimately just discontinuing the Kinect whatsoever, like a year later, and then rolling back the always online thing and the used game thing, just made for an awful, 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 awful start. The PS4 won the generation in like that 2-week period. I don't care what people say. Xbox didn't have a chance after that period. But after that, in 2014, Don Matrick leaves Xbox and Phil Spencer takes over. And in my opinion, Phil Spencer is like one of those guys that you're just like, he knows what he's doing. Like he is one of the best at his job in the industry, like totally. Like I look at like Phil Spencer and like Jack Tretton are the two kinds of people that I'm like, okay, so they led their people through hardship and they are like responsible for bringing them back up. Because 2013, in terms of games, it was just like it was like launch games. It's like Rise and Dead Rising 3 for Xbox, Killzone and Knack, and others like Resogun for PS4, but nothing like particularly special. 2014, nothing else really happens as far as I could tell. PS4 had Infamous and Drive Club, as well as The Last of Us remastered. And Xbox had Sunset Overdrive and Halo Master Chief Collection, which are, like, all of those games are actually really good. I never played Drive Club, but other than that, they're all really good. Honestly, I might give the edge there to Xbox in terms of games. Infamous, I fucking love the Infamous games. Second Son is the worst of the three. And Drive Club, I mentioned I never played, but like it sounded fine. It's like it sounded good, but it was also like they had that weird PlayStation Plus edition that I never really understood. And then The Last of Us is The Last of Us. That came out in PS3, so I'm not really counting it. But I guess if I'm counting Halo, then I'll count it. I don't know. All of them are good games. 2015, though, is where I think Xbox kind of steps up and makes it so that, okay, here's what Xbox under the leadership of Phil Spencer is doing, and PlayStation really isn't doing much. And this is at E3, Xbox announces backwards compatibility. It was so clear from that announcement that backwards compatibility was going to be such a loss for Xbox financially, because like all of the games that are going to become backwards compatible are not expensive. Like they're not going to be getting more than like at most like $30, probably $20 on average or less for any game that they sell from a 360 game. And it's literally just so people will be able to play their old games on the Xbox One. And like, I don't know how many consoles this sold. Probably not many, because Xbox One isn't really doing that well. But this was just a show. This was like a precursor to show that this is where Xbox became like serving the fans, in my opinion, in terms of services, way more than PlayStation did or has done. Because like they're really like listening and saying, oh, you guys all want backwards compatibility. Here that is. PlayStation wasn't really doing that. The shot that Xbox took in that conference where they're like, we're not going to make you pay for games you already own was I wouldn't say it was huge because it didn't change the landscape of gaming, but it was true, I guess. I don't know. I've just always applauded Xbox for doing that because as much as I don't use backwards compatibility, like I've used it every once in a while just for nostalgia purposes, honestly. But I don't know. It seemed like something that they only did because people wanted it or people said they wanted it. And even though it really wasn't that profitable, it was absolutely gigantic for goodwill with consumers. And yeah. And in terms of games that year, honestly, PS4 absolutely blew them out of the water because that was the year of Bloodborne, Until Dawn, and The Order versus Ori, Halo 5, and Tomb Raider in 2015. But we're going to notice that up to this point, I guess just 2014 and 2015, PlayStation doesn't have a fall first-party exclusive. All those games, I guess Until Dawn came out in like August. I don't know if we're counting that. Technically not fall, but I don't know. Portfolio management for PlayStation has been kind of a weird thing here, probably because all their games, like all the developers kind of blew their load either at the end of the PS3 or the start of the PS4 era, and it took them about 3 years to actually make another game, which is like the standard development time now. So the portfolio for PlayStation in those like 3 years up until mid 2016 was just really weird, probably just because they didn't have anything. 2016 though is kind of a year where PlayStation just turns the tide in terms of overall generation because they have one, some really fucking good games, but two, they have the E3 of dreams that people are calling. Like they have this E3 conference that might be one of the best I've ever seen because it has like God of War, Days Gone, like Detroit, Uncharted, Uncharted Lost Legacy, Spider-Man, and just like on and on and on and on. It's just bang, bang, bang. Every game is exclusive. Every game is good. Every game is going to sell fucking 20 million copies. And it's just, they announced PSVR that year, or that E3 is announcing in October, or is launching in October. And it's just, this is the point where PlayStation kind of just like turns on its Speed Racer shoes. And I don't think that's how that metaphor works, but you know what I mean. It's PF Flyers and zoots ahead in front of the competition where Xbox just can't. Like they just don't have the games to do it. And it's at that point where PlayStation kind of just makes sure that regardless of what they're doing service-wise, their games are going to be better. And that's just been a fact. Like I think it's really hard to argue that the Xbox One games exclusives have been better. Like it's just not a winning argument because you have a console that has Uncharted, Horizon, like God of War, Detroit, Spider-Man, Death Strand, like all those games that like, and that's not even going into the others. It's like in terms of just sheer number of games, PlayStation has so many more. I will say that it's hard. They're having so many games on PlayStation has made it so that there have been some misses, some games that should have been good or should have been better that weren't. I'll say like Days Gone didn't get that great of a critical response. I don't know. The Last Guardian was fine. It's hard to, but that was another one at 2016 where they were like, here's The Last Guardian again after 9 years. That like again was fine. Like it wasn't like it didn't blow the shoes off of everyone, but it was, you know, it kind of did what it needed to do. it's hard to live up to the hype after 9 years. But like I said, PlayStation just has the games. That if you're only looking for games, that's kind of where you need to go, right? Or at least at that point, because they just have so many more exclusives, and many of their exclusives are really good. But we move into 2017, and I think I said that PlayStation turned the tide in 2016 on games. I think 2017 is where Xbox turns the tide on both messaging and services, because 2017 is the year that the Xbox One X launches, as well as the PS4 Pro, and Xbox Game Pass launches. While both the Xbox One X and the PS4 Pro were announced in some capacity in 2016, the X was announced at E3 as a Project Scorpio, and the PS4 Pro was just like announced like whenever, not at E3, just wherever. 2017 was when they were like fully blown out and fully revealed. The Xbox One X was such a better, just total messaging platform than the PS4 Pro was, because with the PS4 being so much more powerful, well, not so much, but like significantly more powerful than the Xbox One, having the Xbox One X come out and say, we are leaps and bounds better, like more powerful than our competitor, being the PS4 Pro, like significantly more powerful. It was a lot easier for them to say, hey, we are making this new console. It will play everything you already own, but much better. Like everything runs great on Xbox One and Xbox One S, but it runs better, or like it runs best on Xbox One X. That was messaging that I feel like Xbox kind of killed, and they did it really well. And the PS4 Pro, I won't say they didn't, but they were kind of just riding the coattails of Xbox One X. It was like, oh, hey, you see that messaging for our competitor? Well, you actually already own a PS4, but the PS4 Pro is just like that Xbox One X, but it's for a console you already own, but with the games that are exclusive. And it kind of worked, honestly. Like, I feel like a lot of people have PS4 Pros. I have neither, actually. I have my launch PS4 and my launch Xbox One. But I feel like that's where the X kind of was the standard in terms of that like half generational upgrade, which I think are going to become more standard here. And that's where Xbox kind of became like everyone who cares knows that part of like the Xbox, the Scorpio announcement. They're like, it's a monster. That, like, you know what I'm talking about when I say that. If you're familiar with that E3 presentation, and the PS4 Pro doesn't have that kind of thing. But at the same time, in 2017, this is when Xbox Game Pass launches, which is, I've said in the past, Xbox Game Pass is the greatest deal in gaming and might be one of the best gaming services I have ever seen in my life. Like, more than like Live Gold, or more than like the Instant Game Collection back when it was called that for PS3, way more than those, because Game Pass is like, it's $10 a month, and that's my gaming. Like, for me personally, it's not necessarily, because I will buy other games, but if you want it to be, Game Pass can be the only thing you have for games, and it's $10 a month, and that's it. $15 if you want to buy Ultimate and also get Live with it. It's $15 a month, and like you get everything you need in gaming. Like, that's it. That's $60 for 4 months of Ultimate. That's one game, like one normal game that you get. Like, for that price, you get like literally over 100 games. And I don't know. I don't mean to beat off Xbox Game Pass, but I kind of do, because it's so good. And the fact that there's every Xbox Game Studio game on there, it just baffles me. In terms of games that year, though, Xbox didn't really have one, and that's kind of what frustrates me, because Xbox had Super Lucky's Tale. I guess that was literally the only one I could come up with for the launch of the Xbox One X, whereas the PS4 had Horizon Zero Dawn that year, which is one of the best games of the generation for a lot of people. 2018 though, again, this is where we can try to see Xbox start to try to equal PlayStation on a games level, but this investment, we're still at the point where it's hard to tell if it has paid off, because this is the E3 where Xbox announces, hey, we've acquired 5 new studios, 6 by the end of the year, in our first-party lineup, and those include Obsidian and Ninja Theory, as well as like Playground and the creation of the Coalition. The Initiative. The Coalition already existed. Those are huge. Having Ninja Theory and Obsidian in your first-party lineup is just massive. And Xbox would hope that those are the kinds of things that will match Sony's first-party lineup. It's very much a wait-and-see approach. When you're going up against something like Naughty Dog and Sucker Punch and even like a Sony Santa Monica, Media Molecule, that just it's a juggernaut fight. And I'll be honest, I prefer many of the Sony first-party lineup studios to many of the Xbox ones. I've been on record, I just mentioned Uncharted is my favorite series. The Last of Us might be one of my top 3 games of all time. The Uncharted games are 2 and 3 are probably in my top 5 or 10. So it's hard to argue that Xbox is going to go up and fight against Naughty Dog or things like that. But we very much don't know, and they could. I just think it's interesting to see that PlayStation, as we've seen here, has been pretty stagnant in terms of services. We'll get to 2019, but they haven't really done much to really combat Xbox, but it's because they can be held up by their games that are so good, and it really doesn't matter for them. In terms of games in 2018, PlayStation 4 just had one of the best years ever, with Detroit, Shadow of the Colossus, Spider-Man, and God of War. Spider-Man and God of War being 2 of the top 5 games of the generation. Spider-Man might be number 1 for me, to be honest. Well, Death Stranding, but you know what I mean. They're two just fucking masterpieces. Whereas Xbox had Sea of Thieves and State of Decay 2. Sea of Thieves has come around and become a really good game. I played it for a little bit. It didn't really hook me. Those kinds of games never really hooked me. But a lot of people love it. And State of Decay 2 was just like State of Decay again. It was fine. But in terms of pushing forward and trying to at least come parallel with PlayStation, Xbox did a lot of work there. Now, I do realize that a lot of what I'm saying is Xbox has made a lot of leaps and bounds because they were so far behind. But what I am kind of implying with that is that Xbox, they were behind, but they're pushing forward in different areas that PlayStation isn't. The one area of games that PlayStation is so far ahead in, that one area is games, and Xbox is really going to have a hard time competing, even though they're trying. But Xbox is pushing so much farther ahead than PlayStation that I think Xbox's services are almost unbeatable right now. Moving into 2019, though, we start to have the streaming wars of games where you have PlayStation Now has kind of become its own thing. PlayStation acquired Gaikai in 2012, I think, 2013, and PlayStation Now became a thing really early. But it's starting to become a thing where kind of similar. It's kind of like Game Pass and xCloud combined, which I think could be a really cool thing if it works. I'm not entirely convinced it will work fully, at least not for a bit. But if they can have a thing where you pay $10-15 a month for PS Now, you get a library similar to Game Pass and a service similar to xCloud, that would be like kind of fucking lit to be able to have those two in one. This is again like a bit of a wait and see thing because we don't know what's up, but I think that would be cool. Xbox announces xCloud last year, and kind of soft launches it with the pilot program or whatever they're calling it. I've played it. It works. It's fine. I don't know. I'm not one to be really in on streaming, so I think it's like whatever. But I think for the people who like it, it's cool. Hopefully it works better than... Well, I guess Stadia worked fine. Like, it didn't not work, but Stadia just didn't have the games. But if Xbox and PlayStation can do, like, what Stadia was trying to do better with that library of games, that's where gaming is probably heading. And I think that would be really cool. In terms of games, again, not really competition. PS4 had Death Stranding, which was my game of the year by a lot. Then Days Gone and Concrete Genie, whereas Xbox had Gears 5, which was fine, like pretty good, and Crackdown 3, which is not. But then moving into this year, it's all about PS5 and Series X. And like I mentioned earlier, Xbox has been kind of killing their marketing in terms of they were at least out there first. And people know what the console is, what its name is, what the slogan is, what it looks like. And PS5, all we know right now is the logo and its specs. And we really don't know much else. And I think, like, while PS4 is definitely going to have a better year for games again with Last of Us 2, Dreams, and Ghost of Tsushima, I'm a little worried that PlayStation is starting to rest on its laurels. And to be fair, I've been worried about this for a while because I've seen it with Xbox last generation, and I'm worried that history is going to repeat itself again with PlayStation. That PlayStation has seen that it's so far ahead and they just assume they're going to do well, and they don't act like they're underdogs. Because if they act like they're behind or they're losing, then they'll start to do things that push forward and innovate. Whereas Xbox, who actually has been behind for a while now, is really starting to innovate and starting to get that goodwill with consumers. Now we'll see if it manifests itself in sales, which is ultimately what matters. But I don't know. PlayStation has had an absolutely killer generation in terms of games. Like, the PlayStation 4 game library is almost unmatched anywhere else. Like, in any other library of games, I would say. Like, maybe the PS2 is really good. Like, some older Nintendo consoles, like, I don't know, N64, GameCube, things like that, like, where there are really good games, but PS4 is just so good with games. But the Xbox One generation for Microsoft and for Xbox has been unmatched in terms of innovation and services. And it has pushed for me to see how much Xbox really is kind of set up to do well in the next generation. And I'm hoping that we'll see, like, what I hope for is parity. Like, I don't like seeing one console just dominate. And obviously, PlayStation 4 deserves all the success it got, but I think it's really cool when you see two consoles just neck and neck, because that's what pushes the industry forward. And when you have two really big competitors, you will have new innovations from both sides because they both need to do well. And I think that's hopefully what's going to happen next generation with the PS5 and Series X, to see two consoles that both do well, neither one just blows out the other, and that they both just, kind of kill it. And I think it could happen. I think they both have their strengths, they both have their weaknesses, and I'm just hoping that they both are able to play off of those in ways that Like, they build on what they didn't do well in this generation, which, granted, again, PlayStation 4 doesn't have that many, but there are some. Xbox has a bunch. But I hope they build on those and make a solid generation. But that's that. That was a long-ass podcast. Thank you for listening. That was both the coronavirus as well as the review of the generation. What better way to look at a dismal future with coronavirus than to look back at a really nice past? But that'll do it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for bearing with me on not being here for the past few weeks. Hopefully I will be back next week. We obviously will see. If everyone has died from the coronavirus, then that won't happen. But otherwise, I am planning on being back next week. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.